I think that there has been a scarcity issue because the women in power have had to claw and climb to where they are, where they could open the door. They feel very possessive and scared. So when I was starting Power Women, I remember sitting at a table with literally the power broker females of New York City. They were running networks. They were really the ones, right? And one woman looked at me and she said, "It's been too hard to get here, and so I can't help you."
There are people we meet at the very beginning of our careers whose dreams and ambitions are clear as day before anyone else can fully understand them. Amy Palmer is one of those people. Amy and I began our careers together at MTV, and I remember sitting beside her in a department meeting during one of our very first jobs when she told me that she wanted to become a news anchor and a journalist. At the time, those dreams seemed light years away from our assistant jobs, but Amy already knew. And from that moment forward, she never stopped moving toward it. Amy went on to become an Emmy-nominated producer, journalist, host, media executive, and entrepreneur. She created and hosted the New York 360, founded Power Women TV, developed programming with major studios, led content initiatives across gaming and digital media, and most recently executive produced the Paramount Plus documentary series, The Real Wolf of Wall Street. But the story of Amy Palmer is much bigger than any individual credit. Long before the industry fully embraced the cultural and economic power of female-focused content, Amy understood the audience. She recognized that women were not a niche and that they were founders, executives, consumers, and decision makers, a high-value audience with enormous cultural influence and economic power, deserving of media that reflected the full dimension of their lives. And rather than waiting for the industry to catch up, Amy began building from the ground up, sometimes quite literally with editors working in her kitchen, which I totally relate to. Amy independently created a media platform, secured partnerships with global brands, attracted major talent, and built relationships with powerful distribution partners. She did this all on her own without the resources of an established network behind her, but because she knew how to turn a compelling vision into something other people wanted to join. She has consistently continued the ambition and storytelling craft of traditional entertainment with the speed, resourcefulness, and ingenuity of an entrepreneur, which she absolutely is. Amy has built her career independently and on her own terms the entire time. Her journey reminds us that ambition is not simply knowing what you want, it's having the courage to believe deeply in what you see, the discipline to keep moving when others cannot yet see it, and the determination to build the world in which your vision can become possible. I have watched Amy's career from its earliest days, and I am never surprised when I hear that she has accomplished something extraordinary. And that is what I hope that you all take from this conversation. I hope that when you hear Amy's story, it reminds you that the idea that you cannot stop thinking about may be asking you to launch it, create it, join it, or finally take that first step towards it. You do not need to see the entire path before you begin. You need enough belief to take that first step, enough courage to keep going, and enough passion to recognize that when that little voice inside is telling you, it might lead you to achieving your biggest goals. Amy Palmer has always known where she was going, and she has never stopped creating the road that would take her there. Amy, welcome to the Ambition Code.
Wow, what an intro. That was so nice. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to talk to you. I've always been so impressed with what you've been doing since that moment that we were sitting in that department meeting, because you always knew.
I knew, but I also knew that it was going to be hard. And it has been. It has been hard, but I definitely had a focused mind, as you know.
Definitely. A lot of me feels like nothing worth achieving is easy. It takes effort, which you have shown.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that you have to realize that you can have a goal, but the steps to get there they're not easy. And you have to be realistic about what you're willing to sacrifice to get to that goal. And you have to be smart too. We were talking before that you're going to write a book. I could write a book also about this crazy journey of my career. It's hard to explain to people, but I'm excited to talk to you about it today.
So you have always seemed to know what you wanted very clearly in your life. So where did that certainty come from?
I was a big reader when I was little. I was reading books from the time I was 5, and I would voraciously read them. And then my reading accelerated as I got older, my reading level. So I was always able to, I loved words, I loved stories. And then I started to write my own stories. So I was writing on a legal notepad, my stories about my friends or these boys I liked or whatever it was. And now when I go home to my mom's house, there's like stacks of these yellow legal pads of my stories. I just think I was naturally inclined to this just normally. It gave me confidence as I went out into the world that I knew how to formulate ideas. I was creative. That is something I've always known about myself.
Well, you were very certain when we were young what you were going to do. And I think we were like 21 or something. And I was like, yeah, me too. I have these big goals. But you're like, I'm on my way. So you began behind the camera. That's when we met. But you always knew you wanted to be a host and a journalist. How did you move from knowing where you wanted to go to actually getting there?
That was a hard transition because, as you know, Julie, at MTV back in the heyday, you would be like 23 and you'd be a producer. You'd be in charge of a show. So you had all these responsibilities. You were making great money. You had benefits. You had security. And then so that's what happened. I was on a show called Daria. And I had a great job and I was having fun, but I knew that's not what my end goal was. So I had to leave the comfort about security and believe in myself that I'm going to pivot big time. And at that time, I was actually working like for TRL and the VMAs. So I had switched over to production. My parents were like, what are you talking about? You're like 28 years old. You've been doing this for 5 years. You're doing so well. Why are you leaving? And I just knew that if I didn't do it, then I was never going to do it.
That is so funny because I had that same conversation with my parents. I was like, I told them I was going to leave MTV. I think I was like 27 and I was getting 401k and salary and all the things you just mentioned. And they were like, why? You have a job in New York. And I was like, if I say this is Julie from MTV one more time, I'm going to die, Dad. I'm going to die. And I remember he said, nobody dies at MTV, Julie. But I still left because I had other things I had to do.
Wait, and aren't you glad you did it?
Yeah, of course I'm glad. I had, a great career, a great experience. But I love that I started there because it really created the foundation for everything I'd build after.
MTV was the greatest training ground ever. I tell everybody who asks me about the business, I said, MTV raised me. Literally, it taught me every single thing I know about producing. And to this day, that is how I produce. Right?
Yeah. So media is changing so fast. We're all feeling it. What do you think the next evolution is in media? And what do you believe that creators and entrepreneurs should be paying attention to now?
Yeah, I think that it's never been more important to have your own personal brand. Like everyone is just going to be a talking head on social platforms. And that doesn't mean that you have to be an influencer. It means that you have to have a presence and your presence has to be constant. You really can't be silent anymore. You have to be out there. You have to talk about your expertise. And it's hard because a lot of people think they're bragging, or we straddle that, right? Like between the influencer and coming up normally, but you have to constantly be out there. You can't shy away. Also, the micro influencer. So there's a lot of talk about, it's not about followers, it's about your expertise. Like you could have 500 followers, but still be an expert in the specific thing and have as much, if not more influence than the person who has like 1 million followers. It's really about like what your expertise is.
There's a lot of people that have produced and been behind the camera for so long, and they're really uncomfortable going on camera for anything. What's your advice to them?
Well, the great thing about being a producer is because you've produced probably 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people in your career, hundreds like us, you know what it takes. And like I do, I can produce myself. I can look at myself in one segment and say, I have to change this. I have to do that. I have to do this. And I can do it with a different eye. Like you have to just be more subjective to yourself. Don't be too hard, but you have to kind of remove yourself from what you're looking at.
Yeah. And that's an acquired skill, but I'm working with one of my best friends right now. We're building a digital wellness brand. And she was like, I'm not on camera. And like that, she was like, great on camera. And now she can't stop recording. So it's about just getting out there and doing it and getting used to it, I think.
Yes, without a doubt.
So your entrepreneurial spirit has always been something I so admire. Whenever I see anyone that builds something on their own, they have an idea, they have the gumption to put it together, get it out there, make it happen. I admire you so much with Power Women TV. And it began initially without an infrastructure or financing of a traditional network. But yet you attracted major names, major brands, and distribution partners. How did you create enough momentum that people wanted to be part of that vision?
We brought up that I did this in New York. And I think something like this in New York in like the early 2000s or like the aughts, whatever we're calling them, really helped me because I had at my fingertips the people who would want to be interviewed. So for instance, I was an entertainment reporter at the time and I saw all these women around me saying, I have a show idea. Nobody's taking me seriously. It was a constant conversation in the green rooms. So I told my agent at the time, I said, I have this idea. And he just said, why don't you just start it on YouTube? I was like, okay. So I was watching The Real Housewives season 1 and I saw Bethany Frankel on that. And I said, she's going to be a star. I DM'd her, I messaged her on Facebook and I said, hey, Bethany. So I met her like underneath Grand Central. She came with in like a t-shirt and jeans and she and I made a skinny girl margarita. From there, I reached out to Ariana Huffington, who was starting the Huffington Post. And I said, can I interview you? And she said, no, but what you could do is I'll give you a column and then you can put your video on that column. By the way, nobody was doing this back then. That was like unheard of. So I thought, oh, I have distribution. So it was Bethany, Ariana Huffington. So from there, anytime that I would reach out to people that were interesting to me, a voracious reader, reading all the trades, trying to find women who were interesting, I would say it's on the Huffington Post. So that was my distribution. And I self-funded for like 5 years.
Wow.
And that was hard because I was pretty successful as an entertainment reporter, but I didn't want to report on what was happening with Lindsay Lohan and Paris Hilton. It wasn't resonating with my soul. So that was my mission, but I knew what I needed to do. And also I specifically produced those segments for Taxi TV because at the time I knew that if I put it in Taxi TV, someone would get into that taxi and see it. So that was always in my mind. I need to create small videos that were going into Taxi TV before it was even in there. And eventually, of course, I got into Taxi TV because I kept that in mind. That was always a goal.
So you said two things interesting. One is that you just reached out to people and asked them to be a part of Power Women TV, which is the key. Just reach out and ask for what you want because you never know. People are going to say yes, or they might say, I'll give you a column. Right.
That's exactly what happened. Also, I had a show called New York 360 for several years before then. So I was in the New York entertainment media scene. So people did know that I was doing things like that. However, when I first started that, Mayor Bloomberg said, go and start this show. I had nothing. Nobody knew who I was. So you have to just keep building it from nothing. And then once you get one, then you can get the next.
Right. So you have this great idea. It's always like those first few steps that are hard to kind of embrace before you're moving forward. What is your system or process for moving from proof of concept to actually getting something made and then acquiring the business opportunities?
I literally just start and just have complete 100% confidence that if I care about it and I find it interesting, that means other people care about it and find it interesting. Not that I'm special, but that I am the audience. So if you're the audience, what does your audience care about? So that's how I play. I produce it. Like, what do people care about? And then I just start it. And also I love social media because of the data, right? The data points show me that worked, that didn't work. People don't like this. People don't care. People do. Back then I was kind of like throwing things at a wall and thinking, I hope someone saw that. Yeah.
But getting to know your audience is huge. And so is data. Data is everything, but really knowing who you're producing for.
Yes. And also you really have to think, what do I care about? What are the pillars that interest me? If you're on your phone, what are you stopping at? Honestly, are you really stopping at the 5 things you should do to get shiny hair? No, you're stopping at, wow, that's a really sensational case that happened in Massachusetts or whatever it is. Other people will feel that as well.
Do you ever have any fear? Because you seem very fearless to me. Like you have an idea, you feel like it's important, you think other people will like it, you do it. But do you ever feel like, oh my God, because I feel like it's kind of natural to have that fear, like, will people really like it? Do you have that fear ever? Or is it just like, I have a mindset, I'm going to go?
Of course I have fear, but of course. And by the way, like this has been a very hard road. This is not like, oh, I did this and then this happened. It's fraught with professional setbacks, personal setbacks, things that rearranged my brain and changed my personality. When you become an entrepreneur, you really are setting out a journey of self because your business will show everything that's wrong with you. If anything that is flawed within you or things you have to work on will show up in your business. When you have to work with people constantly or talk them into buying into your vision or understanding your vision or not understand why people can't see what you see. And by the way, that happened to me for years with Power Women.
Mm-hmm.
No one in the industry thought people cared about women. It was across the board. I used to fly back and forth between the coasts. And I remember meeting with a production company in LA, and they said, nobody cares about this.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, fast forward 8 years later, this company is raising $500 million for female focused content, and it hasn't stopped.
Mm-hmm.
But yet I am scared a lot. It's just that I'm also more afraid of a missed opportunity.
Yeah. Well, my dad was a journalist, and he felt like something that drove him, which feels like, since you are a journalist, is that his responsibility to the world was telling other people's stories and getting information out there. And no matter how hard it was for him, even though he was gainfully employed as a reporter, that was his mission in life. Do you think that plays into what you do and what you love?
That's such a good question. Yes, I agree with you. I think it's also that we're not alone. I think sometimes we feel like I'm the only person who feels this way, or I'm the only person who's going through this. And I think through stories and now video and social media, we can see that we're all very much alike. And I think that we help support each other in that way. And that's what's important to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's the human connection. Those threads are becoming more apparent through social media because we're identifying with other people's stories. A lot of it's our algorithm and what gets served up to us, but I think it's creating a level of humanity that hasn't existed in the last few years. Like, that's what I'm seeing with my son as he tells me the things that he's paying attention to and subscribing to.
I agree. And also, when we were growing up, we would just be in a silo, or a young person thinking that I'm the only person who's going through this. But now the algorithm serves up thousands of other people who feel the same way. And I wonder how our generation, Gen X, would have fared under that.
Yeah. I think for my son, not speaking entirely for him, but I see that he feels like he's relating to other people exactly for that reason. And it's helping him define who he's becoming at this pivotal age, as an older teenager. And I think ultimately it's positive.
That's great.
So moving forward before certainty arrives is exactly what we're talking about. There are risks associated with it. And sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's reputation. But what is one of the greatest professional risks you ever took before you had evidence that your idea or your next step actually would work?
It was definitely Power Women, because before that, I was simply a producer, an on-air person, and I was taking a very traditional role, like the path that we was set on. We worked at the companies. That was what my path was. And that's what I thought my path would always be. And I specifically remember filling out articles of organization for my company because I was starting an LLC and I was learning about, all these legal things. And I remember thinking, is this what I really want to do? Because this is going to take me off the path of the Amy you met at the MTV meeting. And that was a big risk because I knew that I was choosing that. That was a big risk.
Yeah, totally. And also leaving the corporate world or a system that exists to create your own is pretty hard too.
That was hard. Although I have to tell you, I loved it and I still love it because I move very fast. And one of the things that I struggled with in corporate America is that I couldn't move fast. And that frustrated me. And that frustrated me even at MTV. I remember doing certain projects and I just would kind of force it to happen. And I was so young. Like, I can't believe I had the balls to do that. I was like, how am I doing this? But I think leaving corporate America, I was just allowed to have a freedom of creativity and speed. It's the speed that really helps me because I just do it, Julie.
I think when we were younger, we did not know what to fear either. We were just fearless. Like, we had our first steps, internship, getting started, everything's working out. What is there to lose? And I think that helped, at least for me, it helped me at the beginning because that's another reason why I launched my first company, because I was like, sure, I'll walk away from this corporate job and tape receipts down to a piece of paper on the floor of my apartment. That will work. It eventually did.
Oh, no, I know.
But was there ever a chapter of your career that was difficult to release? Like, you become so identified with maybe it's Power Women TV or one of the projects you had because it had become so closely connected to your identity?
It was definitely Power Women. Because, and by the way, to this day, people still think I'm doing it. I know that brand was built correctly and it is my brand. It will always be my brand. But because the market was so saturated with female empowerment and feminism took on a life of its own, that was not the brand DNA of Power Women, I had to pivot. I had to get out of the space because it was too saturated and I knew I couldn't win there. So in a way strange pivot, I went into gaming for 2 years, which taught me a lot.
I remember that. What was hard about a pivot like that? And what did you take away with you after that?
It was humbling and it was hard because, Power Women was like a star vehicle. It was my face and it was my name. And I thought like that was always going to be that way because that's how I designed it. But you have to read the room and you have to look at the market. And I had an opportunity to do something. I came to LA and I worked at a gaming company. And that was one of the hardest experiences I ever had. It was bro culture. They did not care about anything I did. They didn't know who I was. I had to learn from these young kids about YouTube culture, about how to produce for them. And it really felt a lot like MTV, actually. Not the bro culture so much, but more of like how it was being built. Then I started working for other gaming companies as a consultant. I built an agency within a company. So I was able to do a lot of things. Like I learned within that ecosystem. Obviously wasn't in it that long, but I learned what I needed to.
Right. Well, you can adapt and conquer. That's what I've seen, which is really impressive because not everybody can.
Thanks, Julie. It's hard. It's definitely hard.
It's all hard, but if you're creating something you're really passionate about and it works, like your creations have worked and they don't all last forever, but then it becomes yours, you brought to life. To me, nothing ever feels like a failure if you can create it. Sometimes things just evolve.
Yeah. And that's a good way to look at it. It's true. It's absolutely true.
This podcast I'm building because I want to be able to empower and inspire people to take the next steps in life, like whether it's people like us when we were starting at MTV or people making a pivot midlife or whatever the step might be. I want to provide them with information and perspective from my amazing friends like you with your life experiences. So I'm wondering if there's ever been someone who opened an important door for you that maybe you didn't expect or was maybe a surprise or you hoped it would happen. And then what did you do when the door opened?
It's such a good question. And this is something that is true. And I've heard it from many women in the industry. I think that there has been a scarcity issue, whereas because the women in power have had to claw and climb to where they are, where they could open the door, they feel very like possessive and scared. So when I was starting Power Women, I remember sitting at a table with literally like the power broker females of New York City. They were running networks. They were really the ones, right? And one woman looked at me and she said, "It's been too hard to get here. And so I can't help you." And this is a woman who ran like a major network. Okay. And it's not about being negative. It's just that the landscape for women was so fraught for the generation older than us. And so that is one. But in terms of like opportunities or people opening doors and believing in my visions, yes. I've had people who say, how can we make that happen? I don't talk about this, but I do build brands for people. And so I've built a lot of people's brands and careers. Like I help them maneuver themselves into their dreams. It's been my experience that the higher you go up, the more people have been holding on tight.
And it's funny because I wouldn't expect that as the experience that you had, because I would hope that women would open the door for those coming up. And I hope that happens more as the new generations come up too.
Well, actually, I will tell you this. Recently, someone did open the door for me because I had an idea to actually do the Beyond the Wolf podcast. And I got my blessing from an incredible woman in the industry, a seasoned vet who like we all know. And she just said, go for it. So yes, I walked through the door and she greenlit it on Tuesday and I was in the studio on Thursday. So yes.
Awesome. Let's talk about that project. You have a documentary.
Yeah. So it's a 3-part docuseries on Paramount Plus, Beyond the Wolf. I'm one of the executive producers. It's all about the real story of the Wolf of Wall Street.
And how did that project come to be? And how did you get involved with it?
So I had told you that I build brands for people. And one of my clients was a woman named Dr. Nadine Macaluso. She is the ex-wife of Jordan Belfort. She was also my therapist. So because she became a therapist after everything she went through with Jordan. I reached out to her. She really helped me a lot. And I said, I think I can help you build your brand. And then she said, okay. And I said, all we have to do is say that you are the ex-wife of the Wolf of Wall Street, and I guarantee you're going to go viral.
Tell me.
So this is the real Wolf of Wall Street. It's the true story of the Martin Scorsese film, The Wolf of Wall Street, also the book by Jordan Belfort, The Wolf of Wall Street. And we really go behind the scenes of his crimes and his lifestyle and the people who lived it with him. It was very interesting to bring that to light. And then, 4 years later, here's this docuseries. So that's the thing, is that you start something here and then it winds up here. You just have to connect the dots.
And how did you put that project together?
So I built Nadine through TikTok and Instagram just by her saying, I'm the wife of Jordan Belfort. And then that went viral. And so I saw that there was this appetite for behind the scenes of this movie. Then I hooked up with BJ Levin, who is also a former MTVer and who I brought into the industry at New York 360 when he was working in finance. Talk about a pivot. He was working at Legendary Studios. And then he knew Jason Leopold, who was working at Bloomberg, who had FOIA files about Jordan Belfort, like 15,000 documents, FBI documents. So we put the two and two together. And then BJ brought it to Legendary because he was there. And then they sold it to Paramount. Then Maxine ultimately ended up producing the project with us. And here we are.
It's amazing. It takes so many steps to get an idea off the ground. But if it's a good idea, I found it finds its way to air. And I cannot wait to see it.
But it's true. There's a lot of different steps. You just have to have faith.
Yeah, faith. Wow. What would you say to the young version of Amy sitting in that MTV conference room all those years ago? What advice would you give her?
I would say you're on track. Trust yourself. Trust your talent. Keep going. Put blinders up, and you're going to do all the things that you wanted to do. It might not look like it. You might not be the anchor of this or, hosting this, but there's variations of success that I think you could be happy that you did.
You are always so focused. And every time I see something about you in the trades or something you created, I'm never, ever surprised. And I am so waiting for the next 5 huge things you're going to do. It's going to happen.
Really, thank you.
So tell us what's up next for you. What are you working on?
So I'm still doing the Beyond the Wolf podcast. We're editing episodes now. That's going up all over social media and YouTube. And then I'm launching my own podcast, Not Power Women TV, Something Else, and building people, brands, businesses, other shows we have in development.
Quietly taking over the world. Glad to hear it. You are amazing. I'm so glad we reconnected. I'm so happy you joined me.
Thank you.
So, thank you for joining us on The Ambition Code. I hope this conversation gave you the inspiration, clarity, and momentum to run through every open door in your life. The Ambition Code is created and executive produced by me, Julie Kellman Reading. Please like, subscribe, and tell us what you think. And remember, your life is waiting for you.